Hello and welcome back to the Fighting Talk 2 channel. If it is your first time with us, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, and tell everyone that you know about it. The guys that need no introduction, if you are aware of our show already, the eloquent analyst, Prath. How are we doing, Prath?
Tafa's doing good, man. How's Connor doing?
Connor's doing good, my friend. Connor's doing good. And downstairs we got George over in Crush Corner. He's no longer a casual because he stayed awake for the weekend. He's moved. He's developed now. He's developed. He's up there.
Props where they're due.
Exactly that. How are we doing, George?
Yeah, I'm great. Apart from the fact I'm absolutely knackered because of my COVID vaccine. Yeah, I literally feel like an actual zombie.
Well, it's better to get the vaccine and all of them good things instead of not getting it and then getting Rona and then do you know what I mean? And then not being able to breathe and sleep anyway.
Exactly, man. Apart from that, man, I'm all good. And I'm very pleased to be elevated up the status level to Crush Corner. I'm honoured. Thank you, boys. I'm honoured.
Crush Corner has always been your thing. I can't remember what fight it was, but you said, I proper fancy him. And we just assumed that you had a crush. I think it was Frankie Edgar.
No, Manel Cape.
Okay.
Manel Cape. It was definitely Frankie Edgar was in there.
I did fancy Frankie Edgar until he got murdered by Troy Sandhagen. And he's still, rest in peace. He's still on that canvas in the Apex.
Honestly, we've had some crazy knockouts this year. Some really crazy knockouts. And fingers crossed we get some this weekend as well, because it is not the most stacked card in the world. As we've seen what the UFC are doing, they're kind of having a load of big names and then they're having loads of little names. And then they're kind of cycling it around and around and around. And we've spoken about this a lot on this show. And it feels like they're really trying to push the prospects and I say younger fighters, but it's more like the inexperienced fighters because sometimes, like Manel Cape, who is like 32, he's still a prospect and he's still up and coming, for instance. So this weekend, we obviously have the main event, which is Cody Garbrandt versus Rob Font, which we're going to break down a little bit later. But George, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Well, we might as well get straight into Crush Corner, mightn't we? So, I'm going to go for two flyweights on the main card. So David Dovrak is fighting Rolian Parva. Is that what I'm going with, boys? Is that right? How are you pronouncing it, Praf?
The proper pronunciation is Julian Paiva.
Right, well, that geezer from Brazil. David Dovrak is the guy I want to highlight most in this fight because he's undefeated since he came into the UFC, and he's currently riding, I think, a 16-fight win streak in his career. I think initially he went 3-3 in his professional career. I think he's now 19-3. And in a division that obviously a few years ago didn't even look like it was going to exist, to now kind of roll back and looking and having this kind of resurgence. Flyweight needs prospects. Flyweight needs competition. And if you're looking for guys who can potentially compete with the current champion, Mr. Figueiredo, guys like Dovrak are definitely going to drag a bit of attention because 16-fight win streaks are, wherever you've been, is no joke. This is undoubtedly his toughest fight, though. It's against another ranked guy. But I would say that Dovrak's only maybe a couple of fights away from being in serious conversation right at the top of the tree. And another little fun fact I read today is that he comes from the same gym that Jiri on the Lagers come from. So, of course, this guy is going to throw some motherfucking crazy shit. And he's gonna get the job done. I'm going for Dovrak to finish Julian Pavia, the Brazilian guy. And man, definitely keep an eye out for this guy. He's killing everybody that he faces inside the octagon, and he's definitely one to keep an eye out flyweight at the moment. 16-fight win streaks are no joke, and a couple more fights, he might find himself against a top 5 guy, title eliminator, etc. And he could be fighting for the title within the next 2 years, let's say. I think he's only like 28 as well, so he's quite young. So, yeah, man, definitely someone to keep an eye on over the next couple of years.
Do you think he's going to have a similar style to Jiri on the Lagers, which for anyone that doesn't know, Jiri on the Lagers is actually Jiri Prochazka, and he's obviously got a very unique fighting style. But do you think Dovrak is going to come out and have that similar kind of hands down, throwing back elbows from the middle of nowhere style? And do you think they're going to have that same that same background, coming out the same gym? Obviously, there's a big weight difference between the two gentlemen as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, from the little bits I've seen, because I thought when I saw this morning that he'd had like 65 wins, that instantly got like, I was instantly excited by that. So I was had a little look online, and he does look a little bit brawler-like, not quite as mental as Prochaska, but I mean, that's not going to be possible to achieve, is it? Really, that guy is crazy as. But he does look a bit of a brawler, and that's quite exciting as well, because not only do flyweights like move around like mentally, like mental amounts, if you've got a guy that's going to be throwing it around as well, then yeah, that's an exciting bit of action to be watching. So on a card that isn't so great, and sometimes flyweight fights do seem to like kind of like snooze their way through, maybe this guy might bring a bit of entertainment to it, so yeah, man, like I said, I think he might be like the second fight on the main card. So yeah, if you haven't fallen asleep by 3:30 in the morning on Saturday night, then yeah, stay up and watch this guy.
Well, fingers crossed he's going to keep everyone awake and keep everyone kind of focused on the action in front of them. Prath, what are you looking forward to this weekend? Obviously, we've got some great fights coming up in the main card. There's a few kind of okay-ish ones, some great matchups between two, some great fighters that are not as well known as everyone else, but there's going to be fireworks throughout the card, I think. But what are you most looking forward to on the main card?
A couple of names. So on the main card itself, that obviously the main event are great fights. I actually kind of like the main card opener, Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian, which will be their jobs to keep people awake to watch the Doverick fight afterwards. But a great fight, middleweight fight, two super top ranked middleweights as well, both coming off of losses. Edmund Shabazian experiencing his first loss against Derek Brunson. Be interesting to see how he bounces back from that and what kind of performance he puts on against the super tough Jack Hermansson, who is a submission specialist. A lot of guillotines from this guy, so I'm expecting him to kind of employ the same tactics as Derek Brunson, which is to kind of wrestle him a little bit, make him feel uncomfortable, maybe go for a submission on him. I do see Jack Hermansson as the more experienced fighter here out of the two. So I expect Jack Hermansson to kind of take this, whether it be by submission or probably decision, is more likely. Because I think Edmund's probably got good enough defense that he can probably fight off a lot of the submissions that Jack's going to probably throw at him. But I think Jack is just going to overall just grind him out. And that's kind of the fight on the main card I'm looking for. There's a couple of notable names on the undercard that are pretty decent as well. Yancy Medeiros, UFC veteran. He's been there for a very, very long time. Super long, lanky style. And always appreciate what he brings to the table when he's fighting Damir Hadzovic, who is another, he's had quite a few fights in the UFC now, a bit of a grinding Bosnian wrestler. So it'd be an interesting matchup there. Court Mcgee versus Claudio Silva. Claudio Hannibal Silva used to be actually a resident of the UK, trained out of London Shoot Fighters, which I know, Connor, you're very familiar with, and trained there for a little bit. And now he trains out an American Top Team. Great submission specialist as well. So it'd be interesting to see how he does here against Court Mcgee, who, again, is another veteran of the game. So a lot of older names here as well, mixed in with kind of newer people that we don't know. Ben Rothwell versus Chris Barnett. Haven't heard of Chris Barnett. Obviously, I've heard of Ben Rothwell. So quite a mixture of names here, but should be interesting. It's either going to be a lot of decisions or a lot of finishes, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the Jack Hermansson versus Edmund Shabazian fight. I feel like Shabazian came out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, he was just in the mix, in the conversational pieces. But do you think he's kind of riding off of the infamous kind of trainer that he has in Edmund Tavarian and the Ronda Rousey kind of group, or do you think he's a good enough standalone fighter to kind of be out there mixing it in with the big boys? Because for me, I always feel like Jack Hermansson is, like you said, a very experienced fighter and a very good submission artist as well. And I feel like he's a lot bigger, although he's 6'1" and Shabazian's 6'2". They're both coming in at 185. I feel like Hermansson he's a bigger kind of person, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? But
I think Shabazian has kind of like Dan Hooker's physique, right? Very, very skinny, very tall, very long. He kind of brings in that same style as well, which is kind of fighting from the outside. Do I think that he can be a credible UFC fighter with or without Edmund Tavarian? I would say yeah, absolutely. And it looks like, he's obviously attached his name and attached himself to that Edmund Tarverdyan, and I know he's managed by Ronda Rousey, so you're talking about the entirely same, the same team here that are dealing with him going up. So I think it's good to have his name attached to Ronda Rousey. Maybe a little bit less Edmund Tarverdyan, because I think of just his reputation within the UFC, and obviously Ronda's last fight in the UFC has kind of tarnished his legacy, I guess. You would say more so than anything, more than her legacy, even though she didn't really say anything after the fight and just disappeared into the WWE. We'll talk about that another time. I think he is a great fighter. I think he possesses a lot of skills. You watched what he did against Brad Tavares, head kick knockout there. That's, you don't see that too often in too many people that are willing to throw those kind of strikes in the first place. I was rewatching a lot of 262, and the one thing I noticed as I was watching the fights through was like, most of them are just like boxing. They're boxing with their hands, and then they're kind of using a bit of wrestling. Like, you don't see a lot of actual kickboxers until you get to like Edson Barbosa. And then Edson Barbosa is like and you see what he does. Like, his style is so different to Shane Burgos that he was able to really just overwhelm him with the leg kicks, body kicks, head kicks, everything. And I think he brings that to the table a little bit more so than most of the other middleweights. Like, if you look at only the real top of the division are really the guys that are using their complete skill sets. Rob Whittaker, Israel Adesanya, those guys. So I do see him being a little bit, it's going to take him a while because he's young. So I do believe it's going to it takes a while for any of these guys to find their footing in the UFC. And I only believe he's had like a couple of fights, but they've kind of shot him to the top. But I think it's because of Ronda's name that they've really like invested in him. He's a good looking kid as well. That obviously means a lot to, the UFC and that who they want to be representing their company and the face of the company and all that kind of jazz. So I can see them like really like, if he wins here against Jack Manson, I could actually really see them putting him against like a top of the top middleweight fighter here, just to kind of boost him up the rankings and to have him be like a contender or a number one contender and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, win or lose, what they do with Edmund Shabazian after this.
Yeah, and I think obviously because Brad Tavares fought Israel Adesanya, he was one of his first fights, and Israel Adesanya actually went the full distance. I think it was a 5-round fight, and they went the full distance. So if you're kind of going on an MMA maths kind of thing, if Shabazian can knock him out, then can he beat Adesanya? Who knows? Who knows? George, do you think it's a detriment to be in the UFC at such a young age and being propelled straight to the top? Because being 23, he's obviously very, very young. Similar to the kind of Chase Hooper. You're kind of learning on the job when you're 18, 19 years old, right? But it takes a very, very special individual, kind of like a John Jones kind of person that comes in at a very, very young age and, just completely destroys the whole place. But times have changed so much since John Jones was at the top of the division and clearing out the division. Do you think coming into the UFC at 23 is going to be a detriment to Edmund Shabazian's career moving forward if he takes too many losses from these very, very well-rounded competitors he's going to be fighting?
I think there's positive and negatives of both of this, when you think about it. A lot of people kind of like, they kind of harness and like hone their skills like in smaller promotions, and then they work their way up as UFC and they kind of get there in their later 20s, shall we say. I don't think it's disadvantage though. I mean, if you are spending your life, learning, in gyms, with UFC like caliber people, and you are competing against UFC caliber people, then I understand like your development will surely move quicker. But in the same breath though, like when you've got a 23-year-old fighting a guy like Jack Manson at the weekend, you are in the Shark Tank, aren't you, already at 23? And if you suddenly 2 years down the line, your record, I think it's 12-1 at the moment, turns into 12-13-5, suddenly you are in a bit of trouble because your records are very poor, and you could start to be looking at the exit door. So it's a tough one, isn't it? But look, if Shabazian is legit and he is the real deal, then he'll continue to develop and he will find himself in huge fights at a very young age. I just think it's harder than to do these days. I do think there's a lot to be said about learning your trade in these smaller promotions before coming into the big into the big boy like promotion. But look, I'm not hating on Shabazian for it. He's there and he's doing it. But I think this weekend, it's hard work this weekend for him. Jack Hermansson, the experience and the all-round kind of skill set could be dangerous for him, to be honest.
Edmund Shabazian kind of it could kind of go like Cody Garbrandt as well in a way, right? You see, like Cody Garbrandt, he managed to stack like what is it, 10? I think it was about 10 to 12 wins. Then he started getting put up into those championship fights, started losing those fights, and now is back on like another career resurgence. Now looks like he's kind of on the up and up, and he's fighting, you know, Rob Font right at the top of the card here. So it could end up like that in some respects, but only time will tell, and I think it's really in his control to deliver performance-wise compared to Cody Garbrandt, because Cody Garbrandt came out and had the performances, but just was getting knocked out by everyone. And I hope it's one of those ones where he's able to avoid getting knocked out a lot, but is still maybe taking hard lessons in these fights and going forward with them.
I think as well, with Shabazian, I think the Derek Brunson thing was a big kind of reality check for him a little bit. You know, Derek Brunson he always feels Brunson like the kind of guy you've got to go through to kind of crack the top guys. And maybe Hermansson's in that same kind of bracket as well now. You know, you got to crack a Hermansson or a Brunson to kind of find your way into the even better mixed martial artists in that division. You know, but you know, last summer when he came into that Brunson fight, everyone's kind of like, this is the guy. Yeah, he'll see Brunson, you know, he'll go through Brunson, and Brunson kind of gave him a bit of a lesson. And actually that could be a real positive that we see on Saturday night. It could be like, well, I've learned a lot from that Brunson fight, and I know what I've got to do now to kind of get myself wins in the UFC. Yeah, it's an interesting fight. It's for Shabazian, as it is for Manson. I said this to you, Connor, before we started recording. I don't really understand why he's taking this fight, Hermansson. Like, really, it doesn't make much sense. You know, his record, although it's been a bit up and down, he's fought top guys: Cannonier, Gastelum, Vettori. You know, it's like I'm a bit confused as to why he wants to take this fight, to be honest.
And interesting for Edmund to take this fight as well, because, you know, you're basically fighting a harder version of Derek Brunson, right? Someone that can wrestle and submit you, whereas Derek Brunson was kind of just pounding him on the floor a little bit. So interesting for Edmund to take this fight as well as Jack. I would hope that Edmund would take that kind of loss from the Derek Brunson and want to turn around and fight maybe a little bit of a lower ranked person, but they've thrown him right in the fire. Like, all credit to him. Let's see how he does though.
Yeah, completely. Because obviously Jack Hermansson's had a bit of an up and down career, but he's beaten some really, really good fighters. You know, he's been up there in the mix for, you know, 3 or 4 years now. You know, Kelvin Gastelum, like you said, he'll hooked him within the first 20 minutes. You know, it was unfortunate the Gastelum was rolling the wrong way, which was, you know, a pretty basic thing that he obviously just didn't, you know, he got a bit flustered in the first 1 minute and 18 seconds of the fight, ended up on the ground and stuff. But I feel like if Jack Hermansson doesn't get the win here, and he is still a very young man as well. He's only 32, I believe, or 33, early 30s. So he's just coming into his prime as well. He's 32. So he's just coming into his prime as well. Essentially, this should be, fingers crossed for Jack Hermansson, a busy night at the office, but it should also be a win from him, you know, because then if he doesn't catch this W, he's back out. He's back out on the outskirts, and he's going to have to really tunnel his way to get back in. He's going to have 3, 4, 5 fights before he's back up in the mix. And as we know, these fighters, they have 2, maybe 3 fights a year at most. So what you're looking at, he's 35. If he takes a W, if he takes the loss at the weekend, now he's 35. Now he's 36. Now, you know, we'll be sitting here doing this podcast saying, well, he's on the back end of his career, but he's trying to make one last run. Do you know what I mean? So this is a real kind of, you know, a real kind of table turner for him.
The UFC is so unforgiving, though, right? Because you beat Gastelum on Fight Island. Everyone's going, Jack Hermansson, man, this is it, man. You know, you're like 1 fight away now, and literally he was 1 fight away because he lost to Vettori. If he had beaten Vettori, would we be talking about him, you know, fighting Adesanya this year at some point? You know, this is the kind of like, that's the unforgiving nature of the year. And you could suddenly find yourself, if you lose to Shabazian on Saturday, like in the 11, 12, 13 ranked bracket, you know, you could find yourself down in that kind of area, you know, in less than a year. You know, that's a crazy drop in less than 12 months. But that's just the nature of this sport. You take your hit, you take wins and your losses.
Yeah, and it's what we've seen happen to Tony Ferguson this weekend as well. Taking another loss, but he's had a couple of losses, but to very, very top level opponents, and he's gone from being, right, I'm fighting Khabib for the belt, years of injuries and stuff like that, right, I'm fighting Khabib for the belt. And then all of a sudden, I'm not sure when the rankings go up, but he's going to be outside of Beneil Dariush. So he's going to go from number 2 to now he's number 4, and then one more fight. And now he's, he might be looking at number 7 or 8. And it's just crazy how you can just turn so quickly in this sport. You really, really can. But Prath, there's obviously a fight in the middle of this main event, Justin Tafa versus Jared Vernata. And what are you taking away from this fight? And why do you think it's so high up on the main event? Because Justin Tafa's, I think he's 4-2 in the UFC. Are they trying to elevate him? Are they trying to elevate Jared Vernata? What's the plan here for these guys?
I've never heard of Jared Vernata. I'm not gonna Vendora. I'm not gonna lie. I know Justin Tafa is 4-2 overall. So not too sure what the direction here is. Maybe they're just two very entertaining heavyweights. Maybe they'll come to have a knockout. I think George will probably have more information. I know Justin Tafa is a big time boxer out of New Zealand, so maybe they feel like he will have like an exciting performance. They want to put him just below, because you want people to be tuned in for the co-main event, because that's a more important fight. And I think if they have like an exciting fight, the one before that, then kind of like the same rhetoric they use with putting Jack Hermansson as the opener to the main card. It's kind of like that's kind of the opener to the co-main and main event, if you will.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe Justin Tafa took a loss the last time he was out. So it's crazy how you can take an L and all of a sudden you're still on the main card, making main card money. But George, tell me.
Yeah, man, all I was going to say was I think combined for the two fighters in their last 17 fights, whether that's inside the UFC or outside the UFC, 16 of the 17 have been finishes.
Wow.
I don't reckon this gets out of round 1, to be honest. I think they're going to absolutely swing for the fences, these two heavyweights, and someone's going to sleep within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why they've added this to put it in there, as a kind of like, you don't really have too much information on both guys, but if they're going to come out and absolutely try and nail one another, then sweet, go for it.
Yeah. Prath, what were you going to say about Justin Tafa's boxing?
I know he's like kind of got a Mark Hunt style, so I'd be interested to see how they kind of handle him here. I remember when he came in, he had a lot of steam, and they paired him up against, I forget his name, I believe it's Portuguese fella, but I can't remember his name. Heavyweight, but he was like expected to knock him out, and he came and got knocked out, and then from there he's won 1, lost 1. And that kind of tends to be the career of a heavyweight, unfortunately, with just small gloves, big hands. That tends to be the career of a heavyweight. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of those entertaining ones. But I can't say that I know too much about both these gentlemen. So it's a heavyweight fight, so it's going to be entertaining regardless.
I mean, that's the only problem with heavyweight fights. We never get an absolute war where it's backwards, forwards. It's what's his name? Edson Barboza at the weekend. They're both putting the works on. It's a back and forth. We just get bang, you're on the ground in the first 3 minutes, or we're going to lay on the ground for the next 15 minutes. So fingers crossed it is the first one and not the latter, because that'll put, a lot of the UK, European fans, if you have that, it's risky. It's risky having a heavyweight fight in the middle of a card, because you want it to wake someone up and you expect it to be that little bang, adrenaline pump, mamma mia moment that we all need. But sometimes it's just not. Sometimes we get these cards, we got two heavyweights. If my memory serves me, Justin Tafa is going to come in. He's going to come in heavy as well, very heavy. I think the gentleman comes in at 265 or 260, around that kind of mark. He's not a small bloke. Are we going to see we're just going to lay on each other, or we're going to see some absolute cannons being thrown here? Who knows? I
would love to know what the rhetoric behind how they build the cards how it kind of works, especially in the era where all of the fights are coming out of the Apex. So there's not much of a, we're going to Houston, so we need to have someone from Houston fighting on the card.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're going to, they don't have to play into that rhetoric. And obviously Vegas, it doesn't really matter because there's no one there anyway. So it'd be interesting to know how they are built, how they build these cards, how they know like which combinations of people work. What is it that they're, because for the most part, I feel like they kind of highlight a weight class. They go, okay, we're going to put a bunch of heavyweight fights on this one, or we're going to put a bunch of bantamweight fights on this one, and that tends to be the theme of the evening. But this one is kind of all over the place. Like there's no consistent weight class being highlighted here. So interesting to know the way that they build the cards, why they build it that way, and what are they looking for in these fights to sell these cards, because it's all about that at the end of the day. They need to sell these cards to the general public, to the casual fans like George. They have to convince George to stay up till 3 a.m. to watch, Yan Xiaonan versus Carlos Esparza. And I think it's interesting to see, like, Jack Hermansson was supposed to be fighting last week. It's all.
But he was supposed to be like co-main or something, right?
He was supposed to be co-main. So like I don't know if it was a COVID thing or if he was ill and they moved it, or if it was just like strategically they moved it because it was a bigger fight to put onto this card to maybe elevate it a little bit more. But yeah, that for me would be what I would want to know. Like why is it built the way that it is, and why are there like extremely dry cards and then cards with like all the talent in one card? Like you can have some of them where the prelims are all like ranked fighters, and it's like then you get to these fight nights where there's like barely any recognizable names, or like super veterans like Andrei Arlovsky, Ben Rothwell. It seems like they just kind of like cycle through these old names, put them on a bunch of cards to fill the cards out, and then have like cards like UFC 262, which is just absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, we saw Dominic Cruz heading the prelims a couple of weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? And when you see Dominic Cruz heading the prelims, do you know what I mean? It's going to be fire. And I feel like that, the UFC have been putting on so many events this year, obviously to fulfill their contract with ESPN and, various different other people, whatever. But I feel like they're just pounding us. Do you know what I mean? We just, every single week, we've got card after card after card. And, they must have, like 600 people on the roster. And I feel like we've seen all of them already. And we're only kind of like 5 months into the year.
I'd love to ask you guys a question actually before I know George is about to jump in with an amazing point here, but I'd love to know, like, if you guys thought like what is, I hope it's a good one. Where do you think it benefits to have Yan Xiaonan versus Carlos Esparza, right? That's going to be the next title eliminator to determine who's going to be the next one fighting for the title. Is it better suited on a co-main event on a card that isn't super deep? Or would it benefit from being on like 262's headliner of the prelim card?
Go ahead, George.
That's a really good question.
Thank you. Because for me, I'll give you a second to think. Because for me, I feel like it does actually do better in the headline spot of a prelim card. Because I know in America, they're having everything run through ESPN Plus, right? But if it's on a pay-per-view card, they have to go through the paywall. But before that seems to be where kind of their prime time TV viewing is. I can't remember what was the headliner of the prelims on 262. I don't know if you guys will remind Jacare. See, look, you wanna have a big time fight like that, but like having a fight that's kind of like a title eliminator there will have a lot of eyes on that kind of on that spot there, and have bump up Jacare to like the main card, opening fight of the main card or something like that.
Yeah, I think if you I agree that I think it'd probably be better at the top of the prelims. So I think if we had sat down last week and we'd done this and we were looking at the card and it said Yan Xiaonan versus Carlos Esparza top of the prelims, we'd been going, oh my god, holy shit, man! Like this is a fight on top. This is on the main card. This is ridiculous. That's like that should be in the top 3 fights on the card. So yeah, I suppose in a way, yeah, it does kind of make sense, and it could potentially get a bit lost in this kind of card maybe. If it goes to a decision, it's not that great, blah, 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 Well, I suppose if it's on, pay-per-view, or if it's on ESPN, crowd, the whole lot, then perhaps it has a bit more weight behind it, yeah. I get what you mean. It's a good question, though. It's good. Well done, mate. That's a very nice one. It's a very nice question.
See, I think if there was a theme to it, and on a numbered card where we knew it was going to be fireworks from top to bottom, put fireworks from top to bottom. We know what we're expecting because it's a numbered card. Obviously, they're very expensive in the States as well. This past weekend was $90. I mean, we're very fortunate over here. I mean, I get BT Sport with my phone contract. I mean, it costs me £25 a month. So it's pennies really compared to what those guys are paying over there. But if we knew what the theme was and we knew that fight nights are going to be two kind of like veterans, basically, you're still going to get people watching it, or kind of two up and comers, and maybe interchange it and have kind of up and comers and then veterans, up and comers, veterans, and stuff like that, and kind of mixed it around, because I feel like Rob Font versus Cody Garbrandt is not strong enough to be a main event kind of on any card, really. Do you know what I mean? This, fingers crossed, it's going to be a fantastic fight, and I think it will be. But to have that as the kind of first fight on a numbered card, you'd be like, wow, we're kicking it off. Do you know what I mean? And just kind of bring it down, but then have Yan Xiaonan versus Carla Esparza being those two, that title eliminator, that can be up there. These two ladies fighting, because I think the actual theme for this weekend, because there's 4 female fights on this weekend's card, right? So maybe they're trying to highlight the female fighters this weekend out of a 10 or 11 fight card. There's quite a lot of female fights on this.
There's 2 on this card in particular.
And then on the prelims, there's some, no? Or is that in total?
No, there's one. Oh, there's one. There's one fight on the prelims. That's a women's bantamweight fight.
Two on the main card.
Main card.
Yeah, so 3. That's not too bad, to be honest with you.
I've got a theme for this. I've got a theme for this one this weekend. Future title contenders. Yep. Shabazian, future title contender potentially. Dovrak, who I mentioned, future title contender. Zhao Nan, real close to contending for the title for the first time. Rob Font is also getting super close to a potential title fight. Maybe it's future. Maybe all these guys, they're giving them the chance. This is now your opportunity. Make a statement, and you're going to edge ever closer to a title fight. Especially Zhao Nan, and maybe Rob Font, but more Zhao Nan.
So what's your excuse for Ben Rothwell being on the card? Is he a
Felicia Spencer and Justin Tafa and Court McGee? But I see what you mean. There are a couple of guys here that are going to be like.
Well,
I think in like the next 2 years or so, Edmund Shabazian's at least like top 5 consistently.
Let's not hang on a second as well. Let's not be disrespectful to Ben Rothwell. He could go on an absolute tear over the next 12 months, and he could find himself. Let's come on. Don't be Big like that to Ben Rothwell. It's highly unlikely, but crazier things have happened.
It's very true. It is very true. I mean, Alistair Overeem was close to getting his one last shot when he was 41. So, and as we saw this weekend just gone with Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, things can flip, and you do not even know when they're going to flip, and then all of a sudden, bang, you find yourself in title contention. Even the fact that Michael Chandler was even there after one fight in the UFC, you just do not know what is going to happen and how people are going to get these places.
If you told me last year that when Khabib retired, that the title fight that would happen after that was Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, I would have been like, you're an absolute madman. Like, Michael Chandler even in the UFC, like, what?
No, he's a Bellator fight. He'll never come over.
Yeah.
Also, as well, when you look at Charles Oliveira as well, the fact he is even won a UFC title is amazing. At one point, he was 10-8 in the UFC. Like, that is all. Let's be honest, that is shockingly poor. So he's obviously been on this amazing win streak. But if you'd said like 3 years ago that Charles Oliveira is the UFC champion, you would have gone, yeah, good one, mate.
Did he get a bonus for this weekend, Charles Oliveira?
And they all got 75k as well.
Yeah, I thought it went up. Yeah. Fair play, man. He's going to go home and buy half of Brazil. Happy days, man. Happy days.
Charles Oliveira will forever be in my crush corner.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I might dye. I'm not going to dye my hair.
I'm going to dye my hair blonde. Watch.
What I'll do is I will have a crush corner, honorary crush corner, like a Hall of Fame for Crush Corner.
That's it. The Crush Hall of Fame.
The first inductee can be Charles the Bronx Oliveira.
Ooh.
For Crush Corner.
He's in there as well.
I'm trimming this clip up to put on Twitter so we can send it to him.
Yeah. Yes. We should send him an award like a trophy.
I think you'll like that. I think you'll like that.
Or a beanie.
You mentioned it as well, George, about Yan Xiaonan fighting this weekend versus Carla Esparza. And this was a fight you're quite looking forward to, right? Because you're quite hot on Yan Xiaonan. We've had numerous conversations about this young lady, and you think she is the future of women's mixed martial arts, right?
Yeah, man. I think Yan Xiaonan is absolutely legit, and this is the reason why I'm staying up on Saturday night because I want to see her fight again. She's undefeated in her career. She's undefeated in the UFC. She slipped under the radar, and this is now the opportunity. This is the big one. You're fighting an ex-champion, knowing that this is literally, if you come through this, you are gonna fight for the title. It's a bit of a shame that obviously that Weili's still not champion because, a potential Chinese super fight would have been ginormous for the UFC. To put that on in China would have been huge. But look, her against Rose potentially is massive. Also, Esparza against Rose is huge. They fought before, obviously. To run that one back would be big for the UFC potentially. But when I look at Xiaonan, and she's very different to a lot of female fighters in the sense that she's got this unbelievable, relentless pace about her. The kind of work ethic that she presents inside the octagon is not too common that I've seen. But I like the fact that she kind of just goes about her work and she always just gets the job done, like constantly. And yeah, it's one of these kind of things, a bit like Charles Oliveira, where you kind of, if she comes through on Saturday night, you just sit there and go, like, why isn't she deserving of fighting Thug Rose next? Why are we having conversations that Joanna might get another chance, or they should run it back with Weili? Why isn't Xiaonan stepping in, to fight Rose, later on this year for the title? Definitely, a very special mixed martial artist, and somebody who should definitely get a bit more Kamaru Usman respect on the name for sure.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I mean, you've been speaking about this lady, like I say, for quite a long time, and she's done nothing but impress. She's done nothing but impress. Prath,
every single time in this fight. Well, every single time as well, people say, "Oh, this is going to be the problem now. This is going to be the problem," and every single time she comes through. When she fought Claudia Gadea last year in November, everyone's like, "Oh, this is going to be a problem for her," and she made it look easy. Like easy night's work, and I got no doubt this weekend. I genuinely think she gets it done against Carla Esparza.
No, for sure. Prath, what do you think, man? Because obviously Carla Esparza is no scrub. Former champ. She's not a small lady either. I think she cuts quite a lot of weight to make it as well. So she's going to be coming into the octagon very heavy. Naturally, the Chinese fighters are usually very lean and very trim anyway. Naturally very petite. So do you think the weight's going to play a factor this weekend? Do you think it's going to be, a wrestle heavy approach from Carla Esparza? Do you think it goes the distance?
As always with Carla Esparza, it's going to be a very heavy, wrestling heavy approach. Do you know what? I'm just going to talk about the flip side of George's, because obviously it's quite clear that, this is kind of a fight for Yan Xiaonan to really win and elevate herself to that top rank status. But let's talk about it from the other side, which is if Carla Esparza wins, right? That's going to set up the rematch between Rose and Carla, a chance for Rose to kind of get her redemption from that first fight where she was still, I would say, skill-wise, not quite where she is now. Obviously, she's made several levels of progression from where she was when she finished The Ultimate Fighter. So I think that would be an interesting fight for Rose, I think, mentally, just to see how she does with a rematch. It was interesting to see her rematch with Joanna. It was a completely different fight from the first one. And I think the second fight between Rose and Carla could be somewhat different as well. But yeah, and I also think Carla kind of deserves it if she does win, because she's managed to put together quite a few wins here. She's willing to fight, the contenders of the division, the Marina Rodriguez's, the Michelle Watersons, the Alexa Grasso. She's willing to fight them, whereas Joanna's kind of sitting out and just waiting for another title fight. Or Weili, I don't know what will happen with her in terms of, will she just sit out and wait for another title fight to happen? One thing I think is also important to this situation just while we're talking about Yan Zhanan and Weili Zhang being at the top of the kind of strawweight division, is that they obviously want to make strides in China as well, and they want to make it one of the bigger marketplaces that is kind of available in the world for them. They have a performance institute out there, which Yan Zhanan trains out of as well. She trains between, she splits her time between the one in Shanghai and the one in Vegas. So do I think that, you know, with a win here, that they potentially put another fight in China to allow another Chinese fighter to kind of rise up and take that moniker of being kind of like China's UFC champion? I do kind of see that. And then once she wins, bring Weili back into the mix as well. And then you've got a built-in title fight for China there as well. So I feel like that's kind of what I see. I feel like when I look at the matchups that these guys are having, like Weili is having and Yan is having, that's kind of what it feels like it's building up to. But, you know, they still have to win these fights at the end of the day. And Yan is doing a great job of winning these fights. And Cola's also doing a great job of winning her fights as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys kind of match up. I think they have a very similar style. So I think it's going to be kind of, the wrestling's going to be negated somewhat. And I hope it's going to be a little bit more of a stand-up fight. I think from Yan Zhanan, that's probably what's going to happen. I think Carla Esparza is just going to shoot on her until she gets her down. Legitimately, like, if she fails in the first one, she is literally just going to get up and go for another shot. And I think that's kind of like Carla Esparza's kind of game plan for the most part. So if she comes out as a completely different fighter, I will eat my words. And she's going to come out like a Dutch kickboxer and like leg up high and ready to like throw mad leg kick. I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it. But if she does, I'll eat my words. But other than that, we're going to see a very wrestling heavy performance one way or the other.
You touched on it there, but I'm just really, really excited for fights to be available in different places around the world, you know, and there's so many big matchups that are going to have huge, huge rifts in different countries, you know. Obviously getting a UFC event in anywhere in Africa is going to be huge, you know, with 2, possibly 3 African fighters on there as well. That's going to be a huge card, you know. Jiri versus Jan Blachowicz, whatever, over in Poland. You know, it's just crazy that these two ladies, you know, we could have Zhang Weili versus Yan Zhanan in Singapore, for instance, or in just anywhere. Do you know what I mean? In Hong Kong, doesn't matter. And then the Korean side of the fighters as well. There's just so much around the world that are going to be huge over the next kind of 18 months.
Even if you put it in Australia, right? You can put them with a Volkanovski, you can put them with an Adesanya, and people from Japan and China and Thailand and all these other countries they can fly to Australia because it's not as expensive, and experience the you know, kind of like the Asian and Pan-Asian fighters kind of getting together along with the Oceanic fighters. I think, like, you know, they kind of almost are treated as 2 separate, like, you know, like parts of the world, but they are actually so close on the actual map itself that I feel like they should kind of pull all these guys together.
Yeah. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just want two points quickly. Obviously, if they were to do an Africa card, then obviously the 3 lads should all be on that card, which would be insane, which would be amazing. Question about this division though for both of you. There's been a few rumors going around that the UFC is trying to do Joanna against Mackenzie Dern. What do you think of that one? Joanna says that she doesn't want it. She wants a title shot, but she doesn't deserve a title shot. And, you know, what do you think of that? Do you think Joanna gets submitted by Mackenzie Dern?
I think it's unfortunate that the female fighters, and just fighters in general, you know, not to generalize female fighters, but, you know, we're talking about Joanna Jędrzejczyk, so we're going to stick with her. And I feel like she just, because she had the belt once, she's like, right, well, I need to keep fighting for the belt. I'm not going to fight anyone else until I fight for the belt again. You know, very similar to John Jones. Now that he's vacated at light heavyweight, and he's like, right, well, I'm not fighting anyone, but I'm fighting the belt. And it's like, but, you know, cool, I get it. You had the belt, now you don't. But you kind of, you know, you need to do something else. Keep active. You know, time waits for no one. You know, time waits for absolutely no one. And Joanna is not the youngest lady in the world. She's not the youngest lady in the division. So, you know, as bad as it sounds, the older that she gets, there's going to be someone younger that's going to be in there ready to absolutely destroy her at any moment. And we've seen her take some losses. Do you know what I mean? It's not like she's on a huge run. So, I mean, I'm happy to see anyone throw hands. You know that. I've always made this very, very clear. As long as people are throwing hands and, you know, technically putting the work in, I'm happy to watch people fight, no matter the age, no matter the demographic, whatever. I just want to watch people fight, put on a performance, and leave everything out there.
I think what Connor was trying to characterize there is that the guys at the top of the division don't necessarily want to take the fights that could potentially elevate somebody else into that top echelon of the division.
100%.
And I completely agree. That is kind of the rhetoric of a lot of these top 5 fighters. It's very hard to match them up unless it's against someone else in the top 5. And because they know that they'll immediately get put into another title fight, but that doesn't necessarily paint the entire picture, because I think it's very performance driven, right? So whoever has the best performance ends up kind of getting the nod in most cases. And I think if you sit out, there's a chance you can still do it. Like, I can't discredit what George Masvidal just did, right? He was able to get another title fight against Kamaru despite not really taking another fight. Rumors of him versus Covington, but nothing ever ended up actually happening. And then he gets booked against Usman. So I can't say that, the UFC have never done that before, because they clearly have. But I think from a fan's perspective, we want to be able to see these guys perform. And it's a very limited window that these guys can perform. Like, there's no real, we've seen a lot of the male fighters retire at, their late 30s, early 40s. What does that look like for the female fighters? They I don't know if they would have the same time frame and window. Look at, someone like Jermaine Durandamy is, I believe she's kind of in her late 30s into her early 40s, I would say.
Yeah.
So what's the rhetoric on the women's? What age do you want to see a female retire from competition as well? And what age does that look like? I think it might be different across the board here. I'm looking at a lot of the guys in the top of the strawweight division, and they look like they're in their early 30s. So all of these guys are kind of really peaking at the same time. So it'd be interesting. That's why I love this division, because I think the strawweight division is, you're really getting the women at kind of their peak of their fighting ability. They've had a lot of time in Invicta and things of that nature, and now they're in the UFC at the peak of their career, or the prime of their career, technically. So I just want to see them fight more. I agree. I just want to see them fight more. I want to see them take risks. That's why, you love to watch guys like Charles Oliveira, right? Because he takes risks a lot against the matchups that maybe aren't as favorable to him, but he still takes the risks. That's why he has such an up and down career, and why he's had to have so many fights to get to where he is now. But look at him now. Look how experienced he is, and he's a veteran, right? And he's only 32. So yes to that question. I want to see them fight more.
But George, I've got a question for you, right? I'm going to hit you straight back, okay? Can you? I bet you could name for me 10 male fighters that have retired. They've gone, you know what? Here's my ticket. I'm retiring. But you could not name 5 female fighters that have retired.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't name 5 females that are retired. I wouldn't even bother trying. I'm not even going to bother trying. I couldn't name.
Because the female divisions are still so young. What did we say? They're 7 or 8 years behind the male divisions, and they kind of didn't even come into play until so late in the game, which is very, very unfortunate. But it's one of them things. George, hit me.
I can only think of 2.
But who?
Well,
who are the 2?
Who are your 2, Prath?
The 2 I'm thinking of is Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler.
I wouldn't say she retired at a decent age because of her. She didn't retire and go, oh, you know what? I'm sitting back because I've achieved everything I want to achieve. She retired because, she was getting blasted by everyone she fought. That's why she retired. So I don't think that's not like saying Michael Bisping retired because he was old enough to be able to go, you know what? I'm sitting out.
Yeah, I agree. The other one was Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler, I think she retired at 36.
Okay.
And now she's a pro wrestler.
Yeah. And then we've got, is it Marion Renaud? She's fighting Miesha Tate, and that's going to be her final fight in the UFC, I believe.
Oh. Yeah, that's not one.
Yes.
Yeah, man, it's difficult though to think.
Yeah.
It is tough. It really is, because it seems like the women just kind of disappear into this thin air. They never seem to actually go, you know what? Hello, guys. I'm retiring now. See you later. They just seem to either get kicked out, or they move to pro wrestling, or they end up doing films and get called racists. And it's like, you just can't win, man. You just can't retire and be like, cool, I'm retiring now. Yay.
I suppose, though, as this continues to develop, like you were saying, because it's so young, when people like Joanna retire and Wei Li retire, and and Amanda retires and Valentina retires, then we're going to start, when we look back on it, then we're going to remember those kind of people, they're paving the way forward, aren't they, for, younger female mixed martial artists of the future to kind of come through and, take forward what they've kind of created, I suppose. I suppose at the moment, it's like you said, because it's so young, the kind of people that do walk away from it, you do forget about them, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, on to, we digress. I love talking topical stuff for you guys. Honestly, I really, really do. I can do this all day, and, the passion that we have for this sport is very, very evident. But we move on to the main event of the night. And rumor has it, if a strong gust of wind comes past, Cody Garbrandt will get knocked out. So how do we see everyone taking this weekend with obviously Paper Chin Garbrandt versus Rob Font, who's got one of the fiercest jabs in the division? How do we see this going? I'm excited, but is he a finisher? I'm not saying Cody Garbrandt's not a finisher. I'm not saying that.
No.
He is a finisher. I'm not saying Rob Font isn't a finisher. These two gentlemen are complete monsters in this division. They are both finishers. They are both willing to finish. Hopefully they don't finish on each other. But Prath, what do you see happening this weekend? And do you think Cody Garbrandt is going to make another run for the belt, or do you think Rob Font's going to jab him into the ground?
Round one, knockout via gust of wind. I think is the smart choice here.
With Mark Smith being a referee, and he'll be like, "I don't know why I keep getting ruined with this."
It ends up being a no contest for an illegal foul or something ridiculous.
And Chris Lee and Saudi Amato score it to the gust of wind.
Yes, I agree. It's a great fight, man. I love both of their styles. They're both fast as hell. They're both like, you can watch their fights at 0.25 of the speed because just to keep up with how fast these guys are great, especially Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt's got some of the fastest hands in any division, I would say. One of the better boxers out there as well. Like I've always rated his boxing above most of the others because I just think technique and finesse wise, he's always been one of those heavy hitters. So interesting to see how Cody Garbrandt's career has kind of unfolded here since he won the title. It was bizarre. I don't know if TJ took a bit of his soul, or that phrase, he took a bit of his soul in those fights. It kind of felt that way on the back end of those fights because he just hasn't been able to hit the stride consistently. But that last fight he had was good. I can't even lie. I can't say that knockout was an absolute fireworks. I'm trying to go back and remember the fight now, but I don't know if I feel like he had control of that fight for the most part against the Sun Sal before he got the knockout as well. So it will be something to see if Cody is able to keep the momentum going, is able to string. He's one of those guys as well, like because of I think his former championship status, his looks and things of that. Again, that does make a difference in these circumstances.
Absolutely.
And his age, his story. The little kid that he seems to have with him every single time he wins a fight. Put all of these things together, he wins maybe 2-3 fights in the bantamweight division, and you could see him in another title fight against any of these guys. Hopefully not before someone as worthy as Corey Sandhagen or anything like that, but we'll see what happens. Crazier things have happened in the UFC. So I think Rob's going to win this, though. I think he is such an underrated fighter of a bantamweight division. I think that people have slept on him for a long time, and I think his Marlon Moraes fight was kind of a little bit more of his coming out party. I think it showed that he is able to compete and have confidence against a high level fighter. Because I think Marlon, people go in to fight Marlon and say that he's a finisher, he's got dangerous strikes. I think in the last couple of fights he's kind of fell off here a little bit. But before that, he was a very dangerous fight. And I think when Rob was matched up against him, that he was in the peak of his scary run. So I think Rob's going to win this. I think it's going to be a close fight, though. I think there's going to be a war. I think this is actually going to be a really, really good fight, back and forth, like the Edson Shane fight, Edson Barboza versus Shane Burgos fight. I think these two are both going to they've both got something to prove. I think Rob Font as well is wanting to really elevate himself and put himself into title contention. And Cody Garbrandt is a hell of a name to put on your resume to really put yourself in that fight. And people will want to fight him off of that as well. Like, I think people will look at this fight and go, okay, he's managed to take out Cody Garbrandt, right, who I think people have a lot of respect for because of his hands, because of the career that he's had so far. So I think after this, Rob Font gets another big fight and then potentially goes for a title fight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be, like you say, I think it's going to be a fantastic fight. And I think it's going to be stand up for the most of it. I think someone's going to get clipped. They're going to go for a shot, maybe get caught in a sub that way. You know, both of these gentlemen are more kind of heavy hitters. As we both know, as we all know, they're quite heavy hitters for this, you know, smaller weight division as well, which are not known for being knockout artists. But yeah, fingers crossed, it's a 5-round, maybe a 3.5 round absolute banger. So you're going with Rob Font. I just want to confirm that you're going with Rob Font with a W. Do you think he gets it done inside the distance?
It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. Do I think Cody and his glass chin will hold up to Rob Font? I think Rob Font wins this by knockout, and I want to say it's going to be. I want to say it's going to be in the second round. He's going to learn from the first round. You're going to kind of see what happened here in the Olives versus Chandler fight. He's going to learn. He's going to take a few shots here, learn from them, and then come in the second round and finish him off. It
seems to be going that way, you know. Obviously, with Francis Ngannou as well versus Stipe, he kind of felt out the first round, bang, left hook, and it's night. Mamma mia! George, tell me, you're obviously big on Rob Font as well. You think he's going to get it done inside the distance, as you just mouthed. But tell me, why and how?
Well, there is literally no way this is going any more than 10 minutes. There's no chance. I don't believe it for a second. Like, these two guys, the power they hit with at the weight and the accuracy they hit with at the weight, someone is going to get done, and that person is Glass Chin Garbrandt. You know, he is definitely gonna, he is definitely getting himself knocked out on Saturday night. And for me, though, the difference is, right, on Saturday night, Rob Font, this is the moment now for Rob Font. You have to take this opportunity. If you don't take it, your opportunity is going to slip away, I think. You're 33 years old, which is not old. I'm not saying it's old, but kind of the guy that he is and the kind of status that he carries, he needs the Garbrandt win on the, like we just said, on the resume to kind of go, right, now I want the title eliminator and then I want the title shot. He needs that. You know, if he doesn't get it, he'll find himself like struggling. It's same for his teammate Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar needed the Holloway win to kind of go, I'm the man now. Stop like looking over me. I'm the guy. And look, it didn't happen for Kattar, but I do think it happened to Rob Font. I think the Marlon Moraes one was a huge win. It's a huge confidence booster. And I look at both guys, and I think back to a much different fight, which was the Poirier-McGregor one, and they're kind of similar in the sense that McGregor had won a title and Garbrandt has won a title, and I think the question has to be asked of Cody Garbrandt is what's the motivation and what is the desire to continue to do this? Well, you had a guy like Dustin Poirier who is so hungry. He's so desperate to become a champion. And Rob Font is the same kind of guy. You can see it. He's desperate to get to that point. And I think when you have a guy who is completely hell-bent on trying to become a champion against a guy who's already done it, sometimes that plays dividends to people like Rob Font. They're just more hungry for it. And I just think on Saturday night, that is going to show through. I just think Rob Font at the moment, I just think his mindset is all in. You know, he knows that he goes past Cody Garbrandt. He's one fight away, you know. And when you're that close and you want it that badly, you know, you've got to come against the guy who is pretty damn special and who wants it just as much or if not more than you. And I don't see a guy at the moment in that division who wants it more than Rob Font. And so for me, Rob Font knocks Cody Garbrandt out inside 10 minutes. No doubt about it in my mind. I think again, like Calvin Kattar, he's severely underrated. He comes from a great team in Massachusetts, you know, and I think it's a great chance. But if he gets past Garbrandt, no, he's gonna find himself up against, you know, someone pretty damn heavy. You know, obviously Aljamain Sterling is the champion, And obviously you've got Sandhagen and Dillashaw fighting, and obviously Petr Yan is out there somewhere looking for some kind of fight somewhere. So he's going to find himself against a very, very, hefty person should he come through on Saturday night. But I'm intrigued to see where this division goes. Obviously, it's so stacked. Sterling has said that he wants to fight the winner of Sandhagen and Dillashaw, and then if he beats them, he wants Henry Cejudo. I'm like, which I don't quite understand. Especially when you've got guys like Petr Yan and potentially Rob Font out there who, I think it's very interesting to see where this goes. But the most important thing is that Rob Font gets it done. I mean, for Cody Garbrandt, if Cody Garbrandt gets it done on Saturday night, then he'll start to say that he deserves a title eliminator essentially for a title shot. But I just think, like I said, the hungrier nature of Rob Font, the desperate nature to get a title shot, I think that's just is the winning concoction for him on Saturday night, and I think he knocks Garbrandt out inside 10 minutes.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, all the only other people that are in front of Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt is Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen, both guys that deserve title fights. So in terms of what I would love to see the rhetoric of the division, I'm so stunned to hear that Aljamain Sterling doesn't want to run this back with Petr Yan. It's literally just, it's written out for him. I don't understand how you can want to go against just the way it finished and bizarre behavior from Aljamain Sterling, if I'm going to be honest. And I think that's going to be one of the things that really fans are going to hate him for this. The fans are going to they probably hate him for the way he's been parading around with the title and stuff like that. So, wow. Yeah, I love both of these the fights that these guys can have coming out of this as well. It's going to be great regardless, because even if Cody loses here or Rob Font loses here, their next likely fight is going to be someone like Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Pedro Munoz. They're going to have Dominic Cruz. They're going to have an exciting fight coming out of the win or a lose out of this fight here. So interesting to see which way it goes.
Yeah.
Well, quickly, if Rob Font does get through this and Aljamain Sterling gets his way somehow, and he kind of, he might unfortunately run into Petr Yan, and that might become a problem for him. If they say to him, well, if you fight Petr Yan, then, he may potentially put you toward a title fight. I don't think Petr Yan goes very well for Rob Font, but that's a story for another day.
Petr Yan doesn't go well for anyone.
No, because he's the best in the division, right?
He really is.
Yeah, he is. Yes,
He is, and there's no doubt about it. And it's a shame that Aljamain Sterling is playing these kind of mind games. He's going to lose a lot of fans from this, like you say. And is he going to become the villain of the UFC because he's kind of playing these games and he's going to play the heel? Do you know what I mean? Is he going to be that kind of person? But from the interviews that he's had and from his story and his background and everything, he seems like a very switched on young man. And you think, well, you were very switched on going into the Petr Yan fight, and you were kind of almost very humble going into it. Fantastic background. He trains with Ray Longo, right? So it's he's got a good camp. Do you know what I mean? He had a great team behind him. He was training super hard for it. And it's all of that work that you've done, fair enough. You took the illegal knee. You took the route out that you thought was best for how you felt at that time. But then to not even consider running it back and then want to fight someone that's, 4'2" and retired, just baffles me. Now you look at him and go, well, you just in it for the money, because the Cejudo fight would be big. We all know that it would be a big money fight, but are you in it for money? Are you in it for the belt? Are you in it for the longevity of the belt?
I don't think necessarily that the Henry Cejudo fight's a big fight. I don't think Henry Cejudo is a huge name. I don't think he sells an absolute ton of pay-per-views. And also I think the fans will know that this is a bullshit matchup. So I think it will people will want to watch it, obviously, because it's two high level bantamweight fighters. We love watching them. Great speed, around the octagon, and we'll have fun watching them. But I think people will see into the bullshit.
But it's two fighters that people don't like now. That's why people want to watch it, because they want to see someone get knocked out. Why do people watch Colby Covington? Because they want to see him get hurt, because no one likes him. Do you know what I mean? Why do people watch MVP? Because he's got a lot of haters. People want to see him get knocked out. People are happy to see him get knocked out. Henry Cejudo, master of cringe. People want to see him get hurt, you know? Same now, Aljamain Sterling. People want to see him get hurt because he's put himself in these positions. But
I agree.
I just wanted to say just quickly, I'll let you boys crack on the Henry Cejudo chat, but the bottom line is I don't actually blame Aljamain Sterling. If I could avoid Petr Yan, I would avoid him.
Yeah.
I'd be shit scared as well, because let's be honest, he was beating Sterling up bad before the illegal knee. It was heading to a very, very dark ending for Aljamain Sterling. And let's be frank about it. If the UFC do push this and they do get this, Sterling convince him to kind of get it done against, fight Yan again, it's only going to go the same way. It's going to be a very horrible night. So I'm not surprised he's trying to avoid him. He's probably trying to string it out for as long as he possibly can, But actually, there's no guarantee that he's even going to be able to face Yan again. Because if he fights Dillashaw or Sandhagen, there's no guarantee that he beats either of them.
No, completely. I completely agree. And we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for making it through the show. If you do not already, like, subscribe, and do all of those usual things. We do have some merchandise. I will put the link in the description below. We've got hats and we've got t-shirts. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we shall catch you next time to do a post-fight of this. And yes, the title for the show will be Cody Garbrandt versus Rob Font, full fight card. And then in the description, it will say that it's a review show, because that's how we get to reach new people. And we will see you later.